Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be looking at several new items. We have 3 shades of the new Merit the Uniform. This is their new, tinted sunscreen essentially. It's a skin tint and those were gifted to me. We also have a bunch of the new Dior. So I purchased 3 of the new Rosy Glow sticks, a couple of the new blush powders, and 3 of the lip glow butters. In addition, we also have the new YSL quad in Captivating Dunes. So definitely a lot to go through. Let's start off with the Merit. This is the Merit, the Uniform Tinted Sunscreen. And as I mentioned, they gifted these to me. So they sent me 3 different shades plus one of the Merit, the Minimalist sticks. And I have shade Chiffon in this. Now, in their original product line, I had worn shade Silk, which was just a little bit, it wasn't quite right. It was a little warm, a little bit darker. And so this is a new shade for me. So this is going to be shade 30 in the skin tint. And this is described as being fair cool. So one of the interesting things about the way their numbers go is they're actually, the lightest shade is the highest number. So 30 is our highest. So and then we have 28, which is going to be fair, neutral, warm. So let's put this one right here. And you can see it is definitely a little bit deeper and significantly warmer. So you can see this actually has like a bit of like an orangey vibe to it, like a peachy orange. And then the third one is 26. This is fair, light, neutral, cool. So this one here is 26. So we have 30, 28, and 26. And you can see that 26 is cooler than 28. It's got a little bit more pink to it, but it's still a pretty peachy pink. So, I would say it's neutral, leaning a little warm still. It's not quite as cool as something like number 30. 30 is slightly cooler and significantly lighter than 26. So for me personally, with my complexion, I prefer 30, which is what I'm wearing right now. Let's take a look at the face swatches. This retails for $38 US. It has 1.7 fluid ounces or 50 milliliters, and it's made in the US. It's a tinted mineral sunscreen with broad spectrum SPF 45. So there is a printed expiration date on each item individually. So for reference, mine are March 2027. According to Merit, this is a mineral sunscreen that provides broad spectrum UVA UVB protection and a sheer tint that blends in with a light as air finish. It's a sunscreen so perfect you'll actually want to wear it every day. Some of their key ingredients include non-nano zinc oxide. They have some fine natural powders to help give a smooth and blur look to the skin. There are lightweight emollients and a proprietary pigment dispersion technology for blendable, even coverage. On the actual product tube, we just have the shade number, so 30, 28, or 26. But on the actual box that they come in, it does also tell you what minimalistic colors go with those particular shades. So for reference, shade 30 goes with ceramic and bone, whereas 28 works with silk, chiffon, cream, and linen. And 26 is for dune and sandstone. Now, as I mentioned, I had originally worn silk. It was a little bit warmer and a little bit deeper than what I preferred. So I was interested in trying one of the newer shades, more recent. And actually, I did the shade match option that they have there, and I was matched with chiffon, which works really well for me as a minimalist stick, but it does pair with shade 28 in the skin tint. And personally, I prefer 30. 28 is just a little bit still deeper and warmer than what I like. So just something to know, although they do kind of give you some pairing suggestions, they might not be exactly what you're looking for. So if possible, definitely try to test them out like in store or use one of the shade finders or something. But for me, I like the stick in chiffon and the sunscreen in 30. Texturally, this feels more like a serum moisturizer hybrid. So if you're thinking like of a skin serum, those are usually pretty lightweight. They sink into the skin. This has a little bit more of an emollient texture to it, like you would get with a lightweight moisturizer blended with that. So that's what it feels like on the skin. It does have a dewy finish. So it definitely gives you kind of that fresh, dewy glow to your skin. And it just makes you look really well hydrated. There's no like shimmer or anything in there, but I do feel like it has a radiance to it. The color of the skin tint does last all day, but obviously, you know, with SPF protection, you definitely always want to reapply throughout the day. So just something to note, but this is definitely like a nice base. And honestly, if you see here in the demo, I really like the way this pairs with the minimalist stick. So if you put the sunscreen on first, you know, you have that nice dewy base, and then the stick actually acts more like a liquid product if you put that on. So it blends out super easily. You know, when you're using the stick on its own on bare skin, they're slightly more resistant. It is an emollient stick, but now pairing it with the sunscreen, it really behaves more like a liquid, and it's just a seamless blend. It's great for adding a little bit more coverage or touching up certain areas. Personally, I really love pairing those together for a light makeup look, but if you're going for more of a bare makeup look, the sunscreen on its own is definitely sufficient. It's a great product to keep on hand. I will probably actually keep a tube in my bathroom, and you know, for days when I'm not really wearing any makeup, this is something great to put on after your moisturizer or even in place of a light moisturizer and call it a day, just for a little bit of coverage and some SPF protection. Overall, I think it's a really nice product, and thank you so much to Merit for sending these to me. So let's take a look at some fresh swatches to check out any oxidation that may have occurred. All right, so these are the 3 swatches. We have 30, 28, and 26. And let's do some fresh swatches right adjacent to those so we can kind of see. So here's a fresh swatch of 30. Put that right on top. You can see there has been a little bit of oxidation. It starts off a little bit pinker, becomes slightly peachier. Here is 28, and you can see that 28, again, there's a little bit of oxidation. I wouldn't say it's anything significant. Plus, these are sunscreens, so they're going to be pretty sheer on the skin. And then last, we have 26, which, again, is going to be a little bit lighter with a fresh swatch. So we have 30, 28, and 26. Let's do a couple of quick comparisons. I just put on some fresh swatches. We have 30, 28, and 26. And then I did want to make just a couple of quick comparisons here. This is the Lisa Eldridge skin tint, which is my personal favorite skin tint because it does provide a little more coverage than some skin tints. I wear shade T1, so I'm going to go ahead and put this right next to number 26 here, and you can see color wise it's going to be closest to 30, but it's got a little bit less of that peachy note to it, and it's slightly lighter. So this is the Lisa Eldridge in T1. Now formula wise, this has a thinner, more serum like texture compared to the Merit. It doesn't have as much of that moisturizing texture to it. There is also slightly more coverage with this. I also wanted to compare it to the Jones Road Tinted Moisturizer in Fair. And I'm going to put this one along the top here. And this has more of a moisturizer texture. So it's a little bit more of a creamier texture compared to the Merit. The Merit would feel more like in between the Jones Road and the Lisa Eldridge formula. So here's Jones Road, here's Lisa Eldridge. This is shade 30. This is 28, and this is 26 in the Merit. And I would say that the Jones Road and Fair is a pretty fair mix of 28 and 26 mixed together, but perhaps slightly less peachy orange in there, just a little bit more neutral. So I hope that was helpful. Let's go ahead and take a look at that YSL palette in Captivating Dunes. So YSL is bringing out some new quads, and so far 2 of the 4 have been released here in the US. So this is 720 Captivating Dunes, And I have to say, I really, really love this color story. So we start off with this shimmery shade here. And I do want to note that is a very, very soft shade. So when I first put my brush in it, like it immediately indented. I kind of gouged a piece out just with like a soft little shader brush. So this one here is very, very soft. It's delicate, but you can kind of mold it back into place. So this is going to be a sparkly champagne. And then next to it, we have a matte taupe. And now this is a taupe with just a touch more brown than your traditional taupe. So it's more of a soft brown with a tiny touch of gray in the undertone. Then we have this deep brown, and this is going to be a cool brown. So again, we are going to have some gray in that base. And then we have a taupe shimmer shade here. And you can see this is going to be a really beautiful, soft, brownish taupe here. So overall, 720 Captivating Dunes is a really beautiful, cool, neutral palette here. Let's take a look at the eye swatches, and then we do have some comparisons as well. This palette retails for $68 US. We have 4 grams of product, a 2-year shelf life, and it's made in Italy. If you haven't used the YSL eyeshadow quads before, they are going to be a velvety powder formula, but it is a pretty powdery substance. So there can definitely be some kickback, make a little bit of a mess in the pan. So just something to note. And a lot of the previous palettes had a lot of glitter. This, we definitely have some, glitter in the first shade. The fourth shade has some shimmer, but I would have to say that the glitters in these, aside from the first topper shade, I would say the shimmer one, it feels a little bit more firmly packed than some of the other ones where I felt like I was just kind of getting shimmer or glitter kind of everywhere. So just something to note that, I really like the inclusion of these 2 mattes, and I do feel like that fourth shade, the shimmer shade here, the shimmer particles are a little bit more neatly packed into the shade. Now, just some product details from YSL. This is described as a couture eyeshadow quad with high pigment payoff and a soft oil-enriched formula for up to all-day wear. And I have not experienced any creasing with these. I have pretty balanced skin, so creasing sometimes happens for me, but it's not something that's typically immediate. So hopefully that helps for reference. Today, I am wearing this quad with the Trish McEvoy eye base in shade Demure as a base. Now, if you're somebody who's interested in a cool neutral eyeshadow palette, I have to say, I think this is a really, really nice one. A lot of these neutral palettes, or even the ones that have been kind of purported to be cool neutrals, have been neutral at best, sometimes neutral warm. And this really definitely has those cooler undertones in there. We've got some nice basic shades here, but it's really nice to have a quad with 4 shades that all have a bit of a cooler undertone in here. So our champagne shimmer is going to be a silvery champagne with a touch of, it's that silvery champagne beige. And again, you can use that as a topper or, even just straight up sparkle. I really like pairing this with just the matte, the second matte in the top row, the soft brown. Put that as a base and then put the sparkle on top of it. I think it's just such a beautiful look. And the mattes here are super easy to use. They blend out well. They're powdery. They're not messy to apply on the eyes. I don't really get fallout from them on the eyes. I definitely, you definitely want to tap your brush off, but they do make a little bit of a mess in the pan, all of the shadows. So that's just something to note, and that's just a product of the formula here. I love how this deep espresso brown has that cooler undertone to it. I feel like a shade like that is one that we see more often than those lighter taupey browns being actually with a cool base. So the shimmer shade here, again, is it's a soft brown, and we do have kind of a little bit of a silver and golden shimmer mixed in there. And I just think it's a really beautiful shade. I love all of these like on their own or paired or all 4 of them together. I think it's a really great palette, and it's nice to have these 4 shades together. But let's take a look at some similar palettes that I have in my collection. I wanted to start off with the YSL 100 palette because this has been my favorite palette from YSL up until this point. Captivating Dunes has edged this out. So you can see we've got a shimmer shade starting off. We have kind of this like creamy you can, it's hard to see on my arm, but it's like a creamy matte shade. We have another matte brown. You can see this is gonna be warmer, but it's a neutral brown here. And then we have a soft kind of fawn brown. It's a lighter and slightly warmer than the one in Captivating Dunes. Let me put those side by side so you can see those a little bit better. You can see that the 100 is gonna be, it's a little bit warmer here. We have a bit more peach in there. So I would say that 100 is more of a true neutral color story, whereas 720 is cool neutral. So let's take a look at some others. One of the first palettes that came to mind was actually Sand Dune from Cle de Peau. So let's take a look at this one. And again, the 720 from YSL is going to be cooler. We also have more shimmer. The Cle de Peau is, the shimmers are more subtle. You can see we don't have as much sparkle there. And you can see that this one, Sand Dune, is much closer to YSL 100 than it is to 720. But another palette that came to mind was actually Eclat de Nuit from Chanel. So this is 388 Eclat de Nuit, which is one of my favorite, it might be my favorite Chanel palette. We're gonna put this one here at the top. We definitely have some differences. We have this black here. And then we have kind of this matte taupey shade, but this is gonna be warm. It's more of a golden beige. And then this one here is going to be more of a true taupe. And you can see it's actually basically the same as this shade, the fourth shade from the 720, but without the shimmer. So this is going to be matte, but it is going to be very similar to that color. And then our shimmer shade here is going to be more of a grayish green, like a grungy gray green. So I love this palette, and this is one of my all-time favorite palettes to use. I would say 720 Captivating Dunes goes very well with it. And although the color story is not the same, if you missed out on the Eclat de Nuit, I do think that you can get some similar looks with the two. And that's my closest quad that, or palette that actually matches the 720 Captivating Dunes. So just one more time, this here, 720 Captivating Dunes, Chanel Eclat de Nuit, YSL 100, and this is Cle de Peau Sand Dune, which is number 1. So let's go ahead and move on to Dior. So I purchased 2 of the new Rosy Glow Backstage powder blushes, and just a quick comparison. This is the previous packaging here. You can see that we now have a square shape, and it is going to be, slightly different here. Now we still have a click opening and closure. You can see our logos are going to be different on there. And the original, or previous version rather, was 4.4 grams, and now it's 4.5 grams. So I have 2 shades here, and this is 103 Toffee. And this is our neutral shade here. Now it doesn't look like it's a shimmery blush, but there is some radiance for this, and these are pH activated. So when you see this on the skin, and you'll see this in just a second with the cheek swatches, after it sits on my skin a little bit, you can see there's either a warm undertone or a cool undertone. And that was something that they explained on the Dior website for the cream blushes, the blush sticks. But I didn't realize there was going to be quite as much radiance with these powder blushes. This is 77 Candy, and let's take a look at this. So you can see this is pink, but it does have a warm undertone. So you can kind of see when I'm buffing this one out here, you can see a little bit of that shimmer there. It's almost like, it's like an orangey shimmer to it. Now you don't see it as much with the toffee, but when you see it on the cheek swatches, it's a little bit more evident. So let's take a look at the cheek swatches. And you can see with the cheek swatches, I'm using the SUQQU Ren 02 brush, which is fairly fluffy, so I can get a light application. The product comes up very easily, and it disperses on the cheek very easily. After it sits on my skin for a few minutes, and you'll see this, I'm going to show you what it looks like right away, and then 5 minutes later, you can see a bit more of that sheen from the undertone. More of that orangey sheen kind of peeks through. And so that's just something to know. I didn't realize it was going to be quite as evident with the powder blushes. A few product details. These retail for $40 US. They're made in France. As I mentioned, we have 4.5 grams of product, and we have a 1-year shelf life on these. According to Dior, Dior's iconic Rosy Glow blush offers long-wearing, buildable, custom color thanks to a formula with technology that reacts to the skin's pH, creating personalized color and an instant healthy glow. This Dior powder blush is now even more buildable thanks to a pigment-rich formula. The ultra-fine, lightweight blush blends seamlessly for a natural color and a second skin feeling. We have 7 shades that react to skin's pH for a customized makeup result, and 2 finishes. There's natural blur and pearlescent. So between the 2 that I have, I would say that the toffee is going to be natural blur, and the candy is more of a pearlescent finish. Now, they do recommend pairing this with the Rosy Glow Stick. For today, I paired it with the Rosy Glow Sticks, but I put the powder on top just to tamp down a little bit of the dewiness, because the sticks have a pretty dewy, radiant finish, in my opinion. So as for the powder formula, I feel like this new formula is slightly more emollient than the previous one. I think it's going to be more evident in certain shades. I did not purchase a new pink lilac, but some of the shades like pink lilac, they are ones that could develop hard pan. It wasn't as bad as some of their previous or limited edition options, but I do feel like the new version perhaps is a bit better. It still feels pretty similar though to the previous blushes. So if you liked that formula, it's not that different. It is slightly improved, I feel like. However, I do feel like these are also very pigmented. So I like to use a fluffy brush to really get more of that airier, lighter look first and then build from there. So this is the previous formula in number 12, Rosewood. I don't have any of the repeating colors in the powder, but I did want to kind of compare this. I feel like the ones that I have in the previous formula have more of a matte finish overall compared to the new ones. We do have this pearlescent finish here, which is new to me in these powders, but even comparing the toffee, which is more of your soft blur focus effect, there's still a little bit more radiance than the original ones, the previous formula, which just overall seems slightly more matte to me. Whereas I feel like after it reacts with my skin, I see a bit more of that pH adjusting sheen to it. My personal thoughts on these, I think these are okay. I think the formula definitely feels like it's going to last better than the previous ones in terms of hard pan and so forth. It is a nice powder texture. However, I personally don't really love the amount of color I'm getting from the pH adjusting. I feel like the previous version was a little bit more subtle, and I was expecting that to be more the same in these new ones, and I feel like it's definitely a bit more radiant. Now, these can be some really beautiful blushes, like blush lighters, where you've got more of that blush highlighter finish to it, especially for that pearlescent finish, and that can be really beautiful, especially on like a summer day. But it's definitely a little bit more in your face than I was expecting. So for me, these are just okay. So let's take a look at the Rosy Glow sticks, and these are the cream blush sticks, and I picked up 3 of these. So I have shade 12 Rosewood, and we're gonna go ahead and put these down here. So this one here is Rosewood, and let me just kind of spread that out a little bit. And this is one that is described as having a cooler undertone with the pH adjustment. So this one's actually my favorite of the shades that I purchased, but right now I'm actually wearing a combination of the lilac and the toffee. So 63 is pink lilac, and that's this one here. And you can see it is definitely more of a pink with a touch of like that orchid purple. And on its own on my skin, this isn't one that I love. It's one that I like as a mixer. So this is something I like to cool down blushes, and that's why I purchased this one. And then we have 103 Toffee. And This I was expecting to be a bit more nude. This is really more of a peach. You can see here the toffee in the powder is different. It's more nude, more neutral, and it's more of like a rosy brown compared to more of a mandarin peachy orange. So slight difference there. I actually would have preferred the stick to be closer to the powder color. Now for the pH adjusting undertones, the pink lilac is going to be cooler. This one's going to be warmer, and you can see that on the skin. Let's take a look at this swatches. Now in the cheek swatches, I did the right side using a direct application, blended out with my fingers, and on the left side, I put the product on my hand and then used a brush to apply it so you get a softer application. That's actually my preference with this particular product. As for the stick itself, it is going to be pretty emollient. Just like the powder blushes, there are 7 shades here. These retail for $44 US. We have 6 grams of product. These are going to be made in France, and I do not see a suggested shelf life on these. So just some information from Dior. According to Dior, the blush sticks offer 12 hours of custom color with a light reflecting dewy glow finish that makes cheekbones look enhanced and plumped. Featuring a unique pH activating technology, each shade adapts to the skin, revealing cool or warm undertones for a radiant look. Moisturizing and comfortable, the creamy texture of the Rosy Glow blush stick blends seamlessly into the skin for a bare skin feel. We have 2 finishes, radiant or pearlescent. Of the 3 I purchased, Rosewood has the radiant finish, while Toffee and Pink Lilac are both pearlescent. You can see on the cheek swatches that there is a bit of a stronger, more metallic sheen with those, particularly, once they're blended out and on the cheeks for a couple of minutes. So these definitely have that dewy finish to them. The blush sticks themselves are pretty emollient. But the one big con for me with these is that these are pretty highly fragrant. So I'm not super thrilled with the fragrance on this. It almost smells like a fruitier version of a lip maximizer, but you can smell like a little bit of mint still mixed in there in the background. So that's what makes me think of the lip maximizer. But, it's a pretty strong scent. I can smell it a lot during application. After I have it on for a little bit, it goes away, or at least I don't notice it any longer. So that is something to note though. Now, as for the formula for these, I think they go on nicely. They blend out easily. As I mentioned, they're pretty emollient. So if you do have oily skin, I don't know if these are going to be the best for oily skin, because although they do kind of set, they don't 100% set down. So, if I were to go and rub my cheeks, I could definitely move it a little bit. People with oilier skin types, this might not last all day. For my skin, it does, and it doesn't leave like a tacky finish or anything on the skin, so it does kind of sink into the skin mostly. Now, just a couple of quick comparisons. This here is Pat McGrath in Peach Lotus, and texturally for a stick, this is the closest stick formula I have to the Dior formula. Obviously, our finish is going to be very different. These are going to be much more subtle. They have more of a soft dewiness to them, and the stick itself is slightly less emollient than the Dior. So the Dior is still going to have a little bit more of a glossier texture, essentially. It reminded me a bit of the Natasha Denona cream blushes. So this one here, this is the cream blush in Flirty Flush, and this is just the blush shade. Now the difference is when you touch this, it's super emollient and thin, but this kind of dries. If you use just the blush on its own and you spread this out, it dries more to a powder finish. And if you were to mix it with the blush lighter, again, these just kind of set down a little bit more, but the pearlescent finish on the cream blushes reminded me more of using these two mixed together and, getting kind of a similar finish to it. That being said, I do prefer the Natasha Denona formula over the Dior because these do kind of set into the skin a bit better, and they're slightly less dewy looking on the skin. These are pretty radiant. So I need to go in with a light hand or I feel a little bit too shiny personally. My personal thoughts on these, I think the blush sticks, just like the powders, they're just okay. I like the way that they blend out. I like the actual formula and texture of it, but some of the shades are just a little bit more radiant than I would like, and I feel like they set down about 90%. I'd prefer something that, sets down a little bit more, like the Natasha Denona. So I think they are a nice product. I really like the Rosewood shade. This is going to be the one that I use the most. The Pink Lilac is one that I will use more if we're mixing with shades that are just slightly too warm for me. And I do like the way that they look on the skin, but for me, it's not going to be like a daily wear kind of item because it's just a little bit more radiant than I would like. Personally, the biggest con on these though is the fragrance level. It's just a little bit too strong, particularly during application. So if they had toned that down, I would have liked these a lot more than I do. But the radiance level and the fragrance level kind of coupled together, it's just a little bit much for me. So I think they're okay. They're ones that I'll use, but I probably won't be purchasing any additional shades of these in the future. Now, let's move on to the Dior Lip Glow Butters. So this is new, and I was excited to try these. So I picked up 3 of these. This is 102, which is glazed lavender. And you can see we do have a squeeze tube, and you can see that this is angled like a lipstick. So it is easier to apply than a straight up flat, a flat slant there. And this is the glazed lavender. And you can see as I move my hand, sometimes you get a bit more of a pink shift. Sometimes you get more of a blue shift. I think this is a beautiful shade. This is great on its own. You can, build it up to this level or just as a topper to add a little reflect. So I really like this color. And then we also have 103 Toffee, which is a fantastic nude here. It's just your natural nude brown. This color matches more the powder shade. It's actually slightly more brown than the powder in Toffee, but significantly different than the Toffee cream stick, which again is more of a peach. So I really love this lip shade. This is the color though that I would have preferred in the stick. Perhaps maybe, I think it's a really nice nude. And then I also picked up 105 Lychee, which is what is on my lips right now. And this is a new shade. And you can see it's more of like a raspberry. I think it's a really pretty shade. So this is going to be a soft, it's more of a neutral deep pink. And let's take a look at these on the lips. Now, while the blushes had 7 shades in each line and they were the same shades in both the powder and the cream, we do have different shades here. So there are 5 shades in the Dior Addict Lip Glow Butter. They retail for $42 US. We have 10 milliliters of product. These are made in France and there is no suggested shelf life. So we have 2 shimmer shades. There's a light pink and then the glazed lavender that I purchased. And then the other 3 are going to be just a high shine finish with no shimmer. According to Dior, the Dior Addict Lip Glow Butter is a high shine lip treatment that is a perfect balance between a balm and a gloss. Made from 90% natural origin ingredients and infused with a peptide and ceramide duo, it instantly enhances the look of lips with a touch of color and shine while deeply hydrating them for 24 hours. The buttery texture visibly smooths and plumps lips for 24 hours while providing an ultra-comfortable, soothing sensation for up to 8 hours. The applicator hugs the natural shape of your lips, delivering a soft, pillowy feel with every swipe. Now, when I purchased these, I thought these were going to be more like the Dior Addict Lip Glows, just in more of a gloss finish, but these are actually more like the Dior Addict Lip Maximizers. They have the same scent as a lip maximizer, and you have more of that minty and a little bit of a peppery feeling to these the first 5 minutes that they're on. That does fade and go away. So I do feel like these are a little bit more of a plumping product, even though it doesn't specifically say that it is. If you like the Dior lip maximizers and you like that tingly sensation, then you will like these. If those are a little bit too strong for you, then these probably are not what you're looking for. So I was expecting these to not have the tingling sensation, and these do have peppermint oil in them. So if you are not a fan of that, these probably aren't for you. That being said, I think this is a really nice glossy texture, and I think it's comfortable on the lips after the first 5 minutes or so, and it's comfortable. It's a little bit more cushiony than a Dior lip maximizer. It's definitely less waxy than a Dior Addict lip glow. And as I mentioned, it is more closely akin to the lip maximizer, but I would say it's a more of a creamy texture versus the glossy texture that we have in the lip maximizers. We have a high shine finish for sure, and overall I think these are a nice product. They are a little bit different than I expected just because of that tingling sensation, but I do still actually really like these, and I think that their shade range for these is a really nice range. So one more time, let's take a look at those swatches. We have 102 Glazed Lavender, and I love how this isn't too pink or too blue, and you still see with movement a little bit of pink or blue. So I think that's a nice version there. And then we have 103 Toffee and 105 Lychee. So overall, I think they've got a great range here. And my thoughts on the lip butters, I think they're nice. So I like them a little bit more than the blushes from the Backstage line here, but I still wouldn't go as far as saying these are a favorite lip product of mine. So they're nice though. So I would purchase more of these in different shades if a shade came out that I was really interested in. So I hope this has been helpful. Let's just do a quick summary on the items that we talked about today. And we start off with the Merit the Uniform. This is a tinted sunscreen with SPF 45. I think this is a really nice dewy, glowy looking tinted sunscreen. And this pairs very nicely with the Merit the Minimalist Stick, or you can pair it with any of those other types of products or a concealer stick. So I think this is a really nice product. I do like this. For me, I like shade 30. The YSL quad in 720 Captivating Dunes. This is a love. I love this. This is a great basic cool neutral eyeshadow palette, and this is definitely going to be a go-to for me. This is now my favorite YSL quad, and yeah, I think it's a really great color story here. Then we took a look at the Dior Backstage Rosy Glow powder blushes, and I think these are just okay. I do think that the formula is an improvement upon the previous formula in terms of texture and the emollient nature of it. However, these are a bit more radiant than the previous version, and I prefer the more subtle pH adaptive features of the previous one. These have a bit more of a sheen, and yeah, so I think they're just okay. Same goes for the Rosy Glow blush sticks. I think the formula is nice and easy to use. It's a very emollient blush stick with a high shine dewy finish to it. Again, we do have different finishes available, but they're all going to have kind of that high shine, high sheen to them. And I think they're nice, but they're not going to be a favorite blush stick for me. So yeah, they're just okay for me. And then the Dior lip butters, I think these are nice. They're more like a Dior lip maximizer, but slightly cushier than those. A little more hydrating on the lips than a lip maximizer. So that's kind of how we've summed up all of these. I'd love to know if you've tried any of these and what your thoughts are. Please share them down below in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for watching. See you soon.